Marike Splint. Welcome to Token Theater, friends. I'm so happy and I'm so excited to have you. Can we start first by, can you talk a little bit about what You Are Here is?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. You Are Here is a virtual performance that I created at the onset of the pandemic, commissioned by La Jolla Playhouse. And it takes the shape of a travelogue in Google Earth that I performed from my home. So it's both a meditation of what it means to be at home and a journey through the virtual map of the world that Google Earth has accumulated.
And right now, just inspired by the beauty of You Are Here. Right now, I'm in Brooklyn and I wanted to show you.
Oh, that's really nice. That's a beautiful skyline.
It is really beautiful, right?
Yeah.
After I saw you do the performance, I would say like, was it back in September or probably like late September, early August? Yeah. I mean, what is time these days, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't stop, but and this sounds like really kind of like silly, but you made me like really aware of like the beauty that exists in the fact that you are right now like across the country and I'm in Brooklyn and we're having this conversation. So like every time that I would sit like in front of a Zoom and I heard that someone was like, even in New York somewhere else, I would like try to trace where they were and all of that. And can you talk a little bit about that then? Because although this is a show that's very, perfect, I say, for lack of better words, for the pandemic, it's also a reminder that this connections that we are having on a daily basis existed before this. And did you have a moment when you went like, oh, or was that always something that you were thinking about?
I think I was thinking about what it means, what community means on a global level for a while. As a theater artist, I'm really interested in questions of identity and how they relate to place. And also we live in an increasingly mobile and virtual world. And the notion that a community is something super local does not really uphold anymore. Or I think there's sort of several layers of community that we engage in, and the virtual community is a really expanding one. And actually, I was working on a performance in February, and for that we already had the idea. We didn't execute it, but we had the idea that one of the performers would be remote and performing through Skype, and this was pre-pandemic. And at that moment, we were like, it's going to be so interesting to have someone, to have a performer who's not physically present. And like fast forward 3 or 4 months, and that is all that we were doing. So yeah, and then I guess in the end, the performance that did that became You Are Here. But yeah, I had been thinking about how to explore these global relationships that exist in a very ephemeral way.
Although you don't necessarily, I don't think that you can spoil You're Here, but I also like don't want people to know too much about it because it is so like breathtaking that there were a couple of moments I want to talk about, like kind of like around the same topic. Two things that came to mind. There's, when I was sitting right on this couch in August when I saw it, and I had been for the longest time, I left my home country 15 years ago. I was born in Honduras, and I haven't been back since 2012. And sometimes it's usually late at night, because you know how that is. Usually late at night, where I close my eyes and I try to like almost in like Google Map view to trace my way from, if I got to the airport today in my hometown in Tegucigalpa, if I could travel, if I could follow the roads to get back to my parents' home. And there are several instances in You're Here where you go visit your parents' home and through Google Maps. And is that something that you were doing before? Is that something that, what kind of effect does that have on you also as someone who left their home country?
Yeah, I'm always interested in seeing how the places that I know deeply well on a personal level have been captured by big tech, because it's never, it never And that's also what the piece is about. It's like you can get so close and you can sort of conjure it instantly, but it never really gives you what you are looking for. And uh, and I think I don't think for me Google Earth is like a real surrogate, or it doesn't it doesn't replace what we look for. But I am interested in how places are captured and also in how fast they change, or sometimes how they don't change. Like I think that's what I'm most interested in when you go on Google Earth and you see when the last capture was. And there are some places where Google Earth has traveled several times, and you can actually choose several years and you can see a street changing. And so I am really interested in it as like an archive of the world, or like a map that can change and that is constantly being overwritten. But it's always, it doesn't bring you back to your memories, and it isn't the present either that we're looking at. It's sort of this sort of random moment in time. And also I think the randomness to me is really interesting, because there's one way where you could look at it, that it's like a completely unintentional photography moment that's and that captures things that are not intended to be captured. Like all the pictures that are taken, it's not like there are pictures, but there's no intention behind the moment when a camera says snap. And in that way, it creates something very I don't know. Uh, it's like there's something very honest or immediate about the little things that it picks up from the people on the street.
And you talk a little bit about what you know and the research you've done about how Google Earth senses cars all over. And there are moments where you mention that there are actually like cultural nuances to how these decisions are made. They're not like objective decisions many times. And I don't know if I should be like thankful, or I should be like a little bit upset that you were able to make Google so romantic. So every time I go on Google, I'm like, hey, hello, lover. Just like so charming. And the other aspect of the same thing that I was talking about was that, in so many ways, the pandemic has kind of taken us back to when we were children, where our parents told us to stay home, right? And stay home and stay put and all of that. And now, unfortunately, it's like literally there's something out there that can like really hurt us. So we have to like devise adventures for ourselves at home, basically. And when I was like was looking at the faces of all the other audience members, you could almost see like this is like childlike spark in their eyes that you bring out of people when you're doing You Are Here. And it also made me think of how I was like, I was always like a very like melancholic kid who would like spend so much time thinking about all the places that I wanted to go and that I maybe wouldn't be able to go see. And I wonder if there's a bucket list of places that now more than ever, you're like, oh God, I wish I could go here. And if you can talk a little bit about have you seen that? You've seen that, right? I mean, you're doing a show, like you've seen how people's eyes like have this like new like glow.
Yeah, I also noticed that, there's this moment in the performance where I ask people, what place they dream of visiting that they haven't visited yet. And they look it up and they show it on the screen. And in all of the performances and previews that we did, I noticed that most of the images were nature, like really big nature. Occasionally a few cities, but usually I see mountains, I see oceans, I see forests when people show it. And I think that is, also something in this moment, or I think a lot of us are stuck in cities, but the city is not what it used to be, right? A lot of things that are enjoyable about the city are not possible right now due to the pandemic. And yeah, from what I've observed with visitors, when I ask them, it's like, what place do you yearn for now? It's mostly places of nature, but also big nature, and also nature in a way that Google captures in a way that we can't really, you know, it's a perspective that we will never see. You know, it's always like a photo from the air, or it's like, it's sort of the grandeur of it is not really surveyable like in the human eye, because I mean, I guess, you know, we can like fly over it with a plane, or we can like be in it, but sort of that the vantage point that Google shows us is something that we will physically really never experience unless we're like in a helicopter or like jumping out of a parachute or something. Yeah.
Or like with a drone, like, you know, like using your drone to like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like very, so there's sort of an artificial, aside to it, the way that, you know, when you Google these places and the images that they show, it's like, it's not taken from someone standing on the ground. There is something magical also in the way that it is presented.
Yeah, like my father had a flight simulator when I was like a kid, and he was obsessed with like, you know, like getting to airports and stuff. And every time he would let me play, my plane would, let's say, never made it to its destination, because we always like, you know, I was supposed to go to like maybe like Paris, and I would end up like going to the pyramids in Egypt. So I'm sorry to my virtual passengers back then that they never made it. But what about your places that you want to go? Have they changed at all during this time of being home?
I mean, I noticed that I mostly I yearn for people more than places in the pandemic. Like I want to go to places to see people. Like that's what I miss, the human connection. Obviously, my my family and dear friends, and yeah, it's I think at this point it's the places are very related to the people that I miss.
I was, you know, you're talking earlier about like the almost like the symbolism and the value that we assign images and places. And when I was watching You're Here, I also kept thinking about Chris Marker's Sans Soleil. And I was wondering if there had been like any artists, you know, like, you're so great. I was like, oh my God, like, I was like, Chris Marker, I mean, not the new Chris Marker, right? Because like, you know what I mean? I was like so in awe of the way in which you, you know, because usually like travelogues tend to be a little bit like kind of like grandparents showing us like projections of the slides. We're like, oh, here we are, and blah blah blah. And the way in which you're able to blend personal storytelling with like global like storytelling and also technology really made me think of Chris Marker. And I was wondering if Chris Marker was one of your, I don't know, like favorites, or like what kind of art, I don't want to say influence, because then that sounds like, you know, but yeah, like what kind of art, excuse me, what kind of art inspires you maybe, or what kind of art you grew up loving?
It's funny that you mentioned Sans Soleil, because me and my team definitely watched that as research, or the so that's it's interesting that that's sort of filtered through. But there's also, or I think what I took from that is sort of the permission to be very associative, and also to look for the mundane in Google Earth, for the moments that you know are really everyday, or that show people in an everyday routine, and also the, you know, the combination of both voiceover and images passing. And what kind of art inspires me? I think mostly I am moved by art that combines very big questions with very everyday experience, and sort of oscillating in between that. And I think Chris Marker attempts that in Sans Soleil. And in that way, I think that I am also, as an artist, maybe more a thematic thinker than someone who creates in like plot or narrative. Or as you said, I don't think there really is like a plot to You Are Here. It's more of an essay. And what else did we? I mean, I spend a lot of time also as research for this project in Reddit. There's actually several Reddit communities dedicated to Google Earth, and to sort of either glitches in Google Earth or captures of things that shouldn't have been captured, or and at some point when I started like logging the places to maybe incorporate, I noticed that I was thinking from my own perspective and imaginations or places I had been, and I thought I need to break out of that, or I sort of need another entry. I need to get to places that I would not get to by myself. And the Reddit community actually really helped me with that. And the other things we looked at was also sort of the subjective atlas. Like I'm very interested in subjective artistic approaches to places, and of course it also, you know, sort of dethroning the idea that there is only one way to capture a place. And that's of course also the issue with Google. It's, you know, it's such a monopoly in the way of our current cartography, and it's also something that I address. It's highly selective, also in a political way, of what we see and what we do not see on the map. So I have several books also at home called about LA, where I live, that are subjective atlases. There's this book Latitudes that has, you know, the city mapped from different perspectives. And yeah, so this idea of subjective mapping, and also a decentralized way of mapping a place is something that we looked at a lot.
Completely, because like Google's just like kind of like, please Google, don't sue me. Google's totally you know, they're just like perpetuating this like idea of colonization and like imperialism, right? Like I've been to my hometown on Google Earth, and it still looks, you know, very much not as modern as it eventually became. And it's kind of like, it's like they, again, Google, please don't, I have no money, Google, don't sue me. But it's kind of like they like preserving this like idea that, you know, Western wealthier countries have of like countries that they don't deem maybe as worthy. And like maybe there's, you know, like when I was watching here, it's like maybe, you know, like they don't even bother sending their cars over there. Like who needs to go like capture some town that probably hasn't changed, right? And I wonder if like, if you visited any place from your screen that you were surprised at either how much it had changed or how much it hadn't changed, but weren't able to include in your here.
How much it hadn't. I mean, there's a whole list of, I sort of have a separate map of places that we did not include. There's also, I mean, most of them are also places that I haven't been to. One of them is the satellite picture of hippos sort of bathing together. You just see like the outliers of hippos in a mud bath. But also, I mean, the very first iteration of the performance, or how I started making it, I went in Google Earth to locations of super spreader events at the beginning of the pandemic, and because I was sort of both terrified and in awe by the way that this virus traveled and made these connections between places that seemingly, you know, or geographically were so far away, but apparently, you know, there was a connection between certain places in the world that was, and I guess the virus is like hitching rides on us. And so the very first sort of series of places that I logged incorporated the first town in Italy that went on lockdown. China doesn't have Google Earth, but they have a similar version or similar technology called Baidu. And you can walk through the Wuhan seafood market. And I went to this choir, or the church building somewhere in rural United States where a choir had rehearsed. It was one of the initial super spreader events in the US. So I was sort of traveling from these places to these places. And then I also was like, it was really interesting. La Jolla Playhouse also was like, maybe we want, you know, to create more uplift lifting things for our audience. But also I realized that I, the moment that we're living through, it's so hard to reflect on yet, right? And our reality changes by the month or even by the week. And I thought if I stay at a distance, or if these are, it's like I'm just replicating the news or what we know, and I need to find like a more personal way of entering this technology, but then also at the same time questioning what a technology is, and the Google Earth technology. I mean, um, how did we end up here? I don't remember. But so yes, like the first series of of places that never made it was basically the logging of multiple super spreader events all over the world.
I'm kind of glad that I didn't see that version of you right here. I don't think I would have been able to handle that one. But like I was gonna say that also, like, there could have been, and apparently there really could have been two versions of you are here. But at any moment when you started, besides being commissioned, obviously, because that's obviously like if you commission something, you have to do it, right? But besides that, did you find that there was a moment when this happened, when this, like still happening, that you had to give yourself permission, so to speak, to create and to not be constantly grounded? Because I feel that in so many ways, this is a moment, this is a period where the entire planet is grieving. And I don't think we had ever had, at least not while we have been alive, right? Like we had never had a moment like this. And some people choose, and not that it's an easy choice, but some people choose to not just be constantly grounded. Because like, I'm by myself in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I've basically seen like 4 people since March, and besides my UPS guy. And I mean, this could drive anyone, to, I don't know, to so many different places, that I had to give myself the permission to say, okay, this is what it is. This is where we are. This is where you are. You can either like dwell on this, or you can try to do something. But it was like a very active decision, and it wasn't easy at all. So this is like a no judgment kind of like point that I'm trying to make. And did you find that you have to give yourself also a kind of like, I don't know, allow yourself to find beauty and joy again?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the very small things. And I think it's especially at a time when La Jolla reached out to me. I usually work in public space as a theater artist. I don't want to direct or theater. So end of March, they said, do you have an idea? Because we're not using our theaters. Can you think of something that doesn't happen in a regular space, or that would happen virtually? And I had no ideas. Like I was like, I have no idea what to make. And I was speechless about what was happening. I had like nothing to say, or I had no, I was just as overwhelmed as anyone else. But then also I thought, okay, it's, I cannot not do something, or this is also an opportunity to do something. And I guess I'm not an artist who has ideas just out of nothing. I always need like a little hook or some beginning to start thinking about an idea. And but it was very hard. And for a very long time I thought that I that I would have to call back and say, you know what, I don't think I have it in me to create something. And then I just started just doing the work, and just, but it took a very long time to get to a generative turn. And also, in sort of the daily routine of life, finding pleasures in very small things. And I mean, personally, I find it in cooking, or like paying more attention to what you eat and how you eat it. And walking to places that I would otherwise drive to, or yeah, trying to really reconsider how you inhabit the spaces that, you know, you otherwise easily sort of abandon when you go out, or when you go see a play, or when you need to get somewhere fast, and to sort of, I don't know, it's, for me it has been exercise in slowing down.
Mm, I guess we all kind of needed that, right? Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And now I'm gonna go cook and think about hippos. So thank you for that. And would you like to tell our audience where they can find You're Here?
Yes, You Are Here is now available in the filmed version on the website of La Jolla Playhouse. So you can go to La Jolla Playhouse and click on the digital Without Walls programming. It's a whole series of works that they have produced during the pandemic. And then that's where you will find access to the show. It's pay what you want.
Thank you so much, Marike. And I hope to see more work that you at some point soon, because I love this show so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.